And we ended up hiring this, had to be ex-military, pro helicopter pilot to basically drag up big electrical and mechanical equipment on a Saturday morning in Los Angeles. And these specialists were up there tied to the building, accepting the equipment, guiding it in. There was basically like a high dive platform on the 27th floor, just outlook, over the street to bring this equipment in.
Welcome back to the Baxtel podcast, where we uncover the cloud from the data center. I'm your host, Eric Bell, and today we're joined by David Dunn. David Dunn is the Chief Operating Officer of H5 Data Centers. He was previously the VP at Zayo, as well as an SVP at CoreSite, which was formerly CRG West. Welcome to the Baxtel podcast, David.
Thank you so much for having me, Eric. Our relationship goes back at least 15 years, but great to see you. Thanks for having me.
We have known each other for a long time. We used to work, in full disclosure, we used to work together, and you hired me at CoreSite. This is back in 2010, so it goes back quite a ways. And H5 is put together, now that you're at H5, you quietly put together a portfolio of data centers with a focus across the US, right? And with a focus on secondary markets and primary markets. What's driving that growth? How, and maybe what's the strategy behind putting the current metro footprint together?
Yeah, has it been quiet growth? I don't know. I've been kind of head down now for about 10 years at H5. We do what we can to promote ourselves, but don't do it so shamelessly. I would say about half our portfolio is kind of carrier hotel and really getting into tier 2, tier 3 markets. We thought that was an underserved product in the United States. Obviously in the tier 1 markets, right? We did that at CoreSite together. You did that at Equinix for years. We thought that tree was it's a very lucrative and profitable and growing and big tree, but we thought that was largely kind of cornered and picked. So we've largely focused on the carrier hotel side on some of the smaller markets like a Cleveland or a Cincinnati or an Albuquerque, San Antonio, etc. And then the other half of our business is kind of more big box wholesale data center space. And at this point, H5, we're in 20 US markets.
20 US markets. How many total data centers then?
About 22.
22. Okay, so about one per market. And then instead of expanding in market, you might go to a new market, it sounds like.
Obviously, we see some benefit to going out geographically, but now I think you're going to see us do more infill investments as some of our original data center sites have probably peaked towards occupancy and what we can do on that physical property. So we'll look to expand in nearby locations and what have you. Take advantage of operational efficiencies, brand positioning in the market and the like.
Mm-hmm. And speaking of footprint, I think that you're in San Luis Obispo, but not in LA, right?
We're in San Luis Obispo, yeah, Central Coast, the Lost Coast of California.
And so when you said when I asked you about your favorite sport personally, I know that you like to surf a lot, and when you were lived in LA, I know that you used to surf a fair amount. So I'm curious, what's the surfing like between LA and San Luis Obispo?
It's pretty incredible. Famous places, obviously LA, Malibu, Huntington Beach. I love Manhattan Beach. It's like a place where you just get big closeout waves. So you don't get so much of the crowds. It's not your perfect 10 Hawaii wave, but it's fun nonetheless. But going up the coast, Santa Barbara has some incredible breaks. And then in San Luis Obispo, my favorite break is Morro Bay, a beautiful place, gets huge northwest swell, and not too far from our data center.
And if I remember right, Morro Bay might be a cable landing station as well.
It's one of those places that serves both parties, the surfer and the internet user.
Can you use the cable to pull yourself back out, kind of like a little tow rope
Tow rope.
for stuck in
That's
there?
awesome. But yeah, that part of Central California has, I think it's basically tied with Oregon for the most cables coming in. Obviously, it's a launching point to broader Asia, Australia, New Zealand, Hawaii, different Guam, different Pacific islands.
Is that the San Luis Obispo site? And I know it's not your major in your portfolio, but it seems interesting to me talking about it. Is that a multi-tenant site where multiple folks can come in, or is it leased to a single tenant? I can't remember. I thought.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. It's an interesting story. I think one that kind of shows where maybe H5 was before, what we're trying to do now, but also the value and flexibility H5 can add to investments. So we originally acquired the site as more of a passive investment. So it was leased to a global communications carrier. They had long haul equipment there, and we're basically serving that local cable community, right? Backhauling. Think of landing in Central California and backhauling to Northern California on one side, and then backhauling to the south to Los Angeles on the other. A great geographic location for accomplishing that. And this particular carrier, through various acquisitions, owned a site nearby, and they thought they were going to basically maybe move out or certainly want to contract their lease for the entire building. It's about 44,000 feet. So what we did is we worked with various content providers out there that were working on establishing consortiums and building new cables to Asia. If you didn't know, Eric, I'm sure you do, but something like 4 out of 5 new people on the internet come from Asia. So it's kind of a big deal. Obviously, huge population centers, huge areas of economic growth, and a huge area of communications between US based content companies and the people and companies of Asia. So we worked with a consortium, and they're bringing in 2 new cables basically into that
Wow.
site. So we built out new tier 3 data center space on the second floor, worked to contract with that global carrier to basically take half the first floor. And I think it was a win-win-win from all sides.
Wow. Yeah, that's a good. I did not know that backstory, but that's fantastic. So, kind of broadening out to your to the broader view of the U.S. market. What have you seen? And there's been a lot of changes, but kind of summarize your view from your point of view, the changes in the data center market in the last 5 years.
Yeah, I mean, I would go out to these conferences and sit on panels, and I think that one of my favorite questions that were always asked were these forward-looking, what do you see in the data center market going forward? And a couple years ago, I think it was all about consolidation, right? It was like company A buys company C and gets bigger. We see that in so much of American industry is just consolidation, basically towards an oligopoly, right? We see it in every every industry that we know, love, and touch. And so I think it would be foolish to think that the data center space will eventually be anything different than that. But right now, I think the growth is so large that it's going to stave off that consolidation for a number of years. There's new capital entrants, new operating partners, new companies, new data center companies that all have a little bit different take on the business that are going to come in, hopefully flourish, raise capital, meet giant customer demand, whether it's on AI, whether it's cloud services. Who knows what's around the corner? But it's a pretty exciting time to be in the business. So I just see one word: growth. I think that's the easiest way to put it.
Right, growth, and maybe not as much. A lot of people at the turn. We're recording this in January 2024, and a lot of people, predict consolidation at the beginning of most years, right? And so this almost the opposite. We're going to grow, and less about consolidation. And so, from an AI perspective, how is that? How are you seeing H5 supporting those requirements? So you have a mix of carrier hotels which are difficult to support high density, but you also have that big box inventory as well.
Yeah, I think we're so early on AI as a product, AI as a function that it's going to be hard to predict exactly what will happen. But maybe a decent analogy will be to look at the cloud services market, right? If you go back to 2006 and 7 and 2008, it was all about big box cloud. And that didn't stop. That grew tremendously. But what did we also see? We saw cloud needing to go and get bigger at all the carrier hotels, right? So they went to all the tier one markets and they went pretty big. And then they went even to tier two markets and went pretty big. So I'm curious to see what will happen in the AI market, a couple years down the road, 5, 10. We think of AI as basically machine learning. But once that AI has learned, are there applications that are going to need to be proximate to population and industry production centers to make decisions faster, better, stronger, what have you? And I think that answer will be yes. So it's not necessarily about can your carrier hotel support 50 megawatt machine learning center? That's obviously the wrong tool for the wrong job. But I think AI will splinter out much like cloud did 15 years ago.
Right. You have training where, in the big box, and that's latency independent. And you have inference, which is, generating those answers on the fly. And that could be done closer to the carrier hotel, or if not in the carrier hotel, perhaps.
Sure, self-driving cars is an example, and I'm way out over my skis as it relates to exactly how for that application it would be technologically deployed. But you can imagine a scenario where there are things that are big systems, local, and having a site in Quincy, Washington may not serve the people of Atlanta, as an example.
Right. So you said out over your skis, and I don't see you often out over your skis. I've done downhill skiing with you. I've been in the ocean with you paddling, although I'm a novice at surfing. Yeah, tell me a little bit about your skiing background. I believe that you train when you're high school or college. You're training to for some in competitions in downhill.
Yeah, it's one of those things where you didn't know you had it so good, right? So I grew up formative years in Park City, Utah, a ski town. I think it had one stoplight when we moved there in kind of the mid 80s. And you basically did one thing, you skied. And I took a love, passion of skiing. It was right out my back door, could always take the bus by myself, go skiing. I gravitated towards moguls, so I started out in racing. My dad got me in racing, and he was like, "Oh, by the way, it seems like you're pretty good at this other thing." And moguls was kind of coming up. It wasn't yet an Olympic sport. I think they first did the Olympics with moguls in like 1988, and so I got into the sport and call it 1986. And really dating myself here. But yeah, I loved moguls and I loved hitting jumps in the backcountry. So I took a love towards aerials, kind of go big or go home was the motto I grew up with, and fell in love with it. But it's one thing where if it's in your backyard, you can do it all the time. You can hit endless powder lines in Utah all winter without crazy crowds, because that's kind of what the 80s and 90s were like in Utah. The sport has just completely changed now, where you live in Colorado. You look at these videos about lines at Vail and even in Utah. In Utah, the skiing is so accessible relative to the distance to the population centers that it's really just gotten so overcrowded and the like. So it's even in Colorado, it's hard. I would say it's kind of hard to make it up there skiing unless you live in those ski towns. And even then, I guarantee that the people that live in those towns curse everyone coming up from Denver or from other parts of the country and skiing their stuff. So I have one what would I call it, a passion, kind of a sin almost, where I basically go up to Canada with some friends, try to make it once a year, go backcountry cat skiing. and just live on powder for 4 or 5 days and see nothing else. And that's kind of how I get my ski fix these days.
Yeah, I hear you on that. My daughter, my teenage daughter, went skiing yesterday, and it was Martin Luther King Day, so it was a holiday on a Monday. And they drove up, left at 6 o'clock in the morning, and then the ski all day. They left the hill at 4. I guess there's a bus that they took to shuttle back to their parking. That took 2 hours. And then so they got in their car at like 6:30, say, and they didn't get home until 12:30 at night. And it should be a 2-hour drive.
Wow. And we're not even, we're touching on the inconvenience of time, but it was a dangerous night last night in Colorado. I think, temperatures hit kind of -10, at least here on the Front Range. I mean, that is a life-threatening scenario if you run out of gas, you're on the side of the road, obviously the road conditions. So kudos to her for making it back safe. But yeah, it's an adventure to go on I-70. Anyone who's lived in Colorado knows that one.
Yep. And then from an aerial perspective, I know that I've seen you jump, and we've built a jump and jumped off of it. And the most I'll do is like a daffy, which is like this. You jump and you're like just like this, and I feel comfortable doing that. But I've never felt comfortable like trying to do a flip. Even on a diving board into the water, I feel like I can do it, but I always feel like awkward doing it. How do you and landing on the ground? I can't imagine like you're up in the air. How do you know when you're turning that you're how do you land like a cat on skis? And that
Practice makes perfect, Eric. You know that. Anything you do in life, a little practice helps. I grew up, I'm so grateful that my parents bought me one of these original 1980s dangerous trampolines, right? I think we had it for maybe 2 weeks before one of the neighbors challenged me to do a front flip over the fence, and I consequently broke my arm within days of having the tramp. But having a trampoline will just orient you to spinning, rotating, jumping around, and having just comfort in the air that you can't replicate almost by doing anything else. So I credit that, and then obviously you get a little more. I give credit for the people who were going big in the 80s and 90s doing tricks because it was well before the motocross scene that invented or found out that, hey, if we try our tricks and land in foam pits, we're going to break a lot less bones. And so now they have foam pits for, all sorts of sports where people are going really big and dangerous on. And they practice, they make it perfect, and then they take it out on the hard stuff.
Interesting. Yeah. Even the practice part scares me. I don't want to get perfect when I have to practice flipping into the air. But yeah, so let's see. Let's get back to it. What market are you most excited about, or what? It maybe a follow-up question is like expansion plans that each five might have.
Yeah, I think the market we're most looking forward to in 2024 and beyond is probably Northern Virginia. I mean, we are investing a lot of capital in that market, and we're going to have 55 megawatts of available capacity within the next 20 months in that market. So a portion will be ready in 2024, more will be ready in 2025, and then the balance will be ready just at the start of 2026. So I think it's an exciting market. Obviously, it's been the epicenter of data centers for 20 years, right? If you think back to the first AOL days and those deployments in Ashburn off Waxpool Road, et cetera. I think that market's so exciting because of the utility power constraints. So coming up with creative solutions or having the property that's next to the substation that has available power has been, a challenge, and everyone's trying to solve it. And we think we've solved it at least for 2024 and 25. So I think that's probably what I'm most excited about. The market is just so large, so diverse with the types of users that it's the big leagues, right? It's the biggest of big markets in the world, and supply has been a real challenge, and we'll have available supply. So I think that's pretty exciting.
And it is a hot commodity, having capacity come online in Northern Virginia because of the power constraints. How are you thinking? I'm sure that there are people you talk to that would want to buy all of it. Like I just want all 54 megawatts or whatever it is. As soon as you have it, there could be one client you could sell it to, or you slice it up in more, mid-sized chunks or even retail chunks, and you'll still sell it all. It'll take longer, but it'd be a higher margin. So how do you think about it? I'm sure it's a debate internal to your company, but how do you guys think about that approach?
Yeah,
Or
so
which
our
approach do you
Ashburn site might be um, more akin to the larger deployments. So that's a 42 megawatt site. I think we'll tend to look at, demand from a 8 megawatt plus type of viewpoint there. At least that's our objective, is to try to, to your point, get the larger deals, and whether that's four different customers or one single customer. I think we're open to either one. But it is hard to do that first one if it's not the full building, because there are a number of parties we're talking to lease the full building. And then we have our Chantilly site just to the south of Ashburn there that might be geared to just smaller than that. We think of that site as having a capacity of just over 16 megawatts. So maybe that will be better for the 100 kilowatt to 1 meg to even 4 meg type user, whereas Ashburn's going, to that next league up in size.
Okay. And then, yeah, because good luck on leasing that. I think it's fantastic that you have it coming online. And let's transition to, would love to hear some data center war stories. Because you've been in the industry for quite a bit, and so you must have some interesting stories, or yeah, that you could tell us about early days of CRG West or One Wilshire. There's probably plenty out there.
Yeah, I think any story to do with One Wilshire is fascinating, because so many people know the building. It's one of the key points of interconnection in the world. Downtown Los Angeles, that brings its own unique um, challenges and opportunities. I think two stories there are pretty interesting. You use the word war, obviously not to dumb down that word at all, but Apocalypse Now is one of my favorite films. And I remember we were building out a full floor downtown Los Angeles, 27th floor. The building was built in the late 60s, designed for an office building. No one ever thought they'd be bringing up a bunch of mechanical and electrical equipment to that 27th floor. And we ended up hiring this, had to be ex military, pro helicopter pilot to basically drag up big electrical and mechanical equipment on a Saturday morning in Los Angeles. And these specialists were up there tied to the building, accepting the equipment, guiding it in. There was basically like a high dive platform on the 27th floor, just outlook, over the street to bring this equipment in. And if you've been in a downtown area and been around low flying helicopters before, it is a deafening experience. So Saturday morning, imagine downtown LA. Yeah, not too many office users, but at the time it was a growing residential area, new condos, new high rises, that sort of thing. And probably unbeknownst to thousands of Angelinos, this helicopter is just swirling for hours, and the sound reverberating off all the glass buildings was, I mean, it must be traumatic. Like, if anyone's seen Apocalypse Now, you just hear these choppers going, and that's basically what that experience was like. So pretty pretty funny, a unique build. It was successful. No one was injured. And I think we got some angry letters. But I still thank the people of Los Angeles for letting us do that work, wittingly or unwittingly.
Yeah, amazing story. Yeah, and they're a little less sleep that day.
Wakey,
We're out late that
wakey.
night. Good morning.
And but I mentioned another story about One Wilshire because again, you go to the basically what's the interconnection trenches, right? So um, uh, the Carlyle Group acquired One Wilshire about 2 weeks after September 11th. So crazy time in the world to say, hey, we're going to invest a lot of money. We're going to invest a lot of money on communications infrastructure and actually close on the building, something they'd been working for months before the closing. And imagine, a major global event happens and you're just kind of like, wow, should we make this investment? They do. But the funny story is the Meet Me room there was, well, I think calling it the Wild West is makes the Wild West maybe seem too orderly. Basically, tragedy of the commons. The previous owner basically said you can run cross connections without putting a deposit down, right? So just run them however you want, and no one's watching you, and we'll see what happens. And so fast forward probably from a time of, the Telecommunications Act of 96 to when, maybe a couple months after Carlisle bought the building. So you probably had 6 years in there. It was Thunderdome, people running cross connects. And what ended up happening was it was probably the largest bowl of spaghetti you've ever seen in your life. I mean, 4 feet of cabling going every which way. At that time, I'm sure you can recall, most connections were copper and Ethernet. So fiber hadn't really taken off quite as much. So tons of T1s and, fasties just going everywhere. And I'm surprised that so much was suspended from the ceiling above. I'm actually surprised and very grateful that there wasn't some sort of structural or earthquake sort of issue. Maybe it helped stabilize the building. I don't know. I'm not a structural engineer, maybe in my next life, but pretty fascinating time. And kudos to the leadership at CoreSite who just said, we're going to clean this up one step at a time, cable by cable. We had a great operations team. I don't recall any time that anybody was disconnected as a result of that. So really kudos to that team for doing it. But just having the foresight to say this is a major problem and we need to try to rectify this. So a lot of people went into that, but it was quite the notes from the trenches, I would say.
You could almost call that project the fastie that broke the ladder rack.
Yeah, I like it. Yeah, it'd be
Yeah,
a great play by Tennessee Williams.
yeah, exactly. So yeah, because I remember seeing the pictures, and I remember actually seeing it after it was in the process of being cleaned up, and there were just massive amounts of cable, and the techs had to go in there and pull, check to make sure each one was not being used, each side, and then pull it out. And yeah, copper is not a light, medium, and so yeah, you got
It's a
feet.
metal.
Yeah, exactly. That's funny. Yeah, yeah, and thank God that none of the ladder racks broke, or there weren't any incidents. But yeah, it was treacherous, I
A
guess, in
sight
that
to
one
behold.
Wilshire meet room. Yep. Well, let's see. Let's move on to what I like to call is like top picks. And so would love to have you provide a few picks, meaning anything that you find useful or impactful to your life. That, yeah. So what would you suggest from that perspective?
So I was thinking about this. You said, "Hey, think about some unique aspects of your life, what you might recommend somebody." I would say, kind of post COVID, I definitely stopped moving as much. Right, things slowed down. Physically, I wasn't maybe as active. There were obviously challenges with getting together and participating in group sports. And so, as you get older, you really start to having, you got to start think about this stuff. And I picked up racquetball in 2023. I know a sport of a lot of popularity, let's say in the 1980s, maybe 90s. But I have a great opportunity to go and play at a court kind of near my house, and it is fantastic to get those fast twitch muscles, the short sprints. And if you're playing for an hour, it's obviously hitting both anaerobic and aerobic aspects of your cardiovascular health. So I find that to be a great way to get out energy and run and hit and scream. So it's a pretty fun sport.
Yeah, they say the intermittent, getting that heart rate up for intermittent sprinting. I guess I don't know what the official term is for it, but that's supposed to be really healthy for you. And I wonder, have you played pickleball?
I
As a
have
kid,
played pickleball. I find that it's less, it's a shorter court, right? And so it's less movement. Kudos to all the pickle players out there. I know it's probably the fastest growing sport in the United States, but and it's great to get people active. I haven't, for one, I've spent more of my time focused on racquetball and squash, but yeah, pickleball's very very popular these days.
my physician calls it the trampoline for adults. Pickleball, that is.
Is he seeing a lot of broken wrists and arms and
Yeah, yeah,
ankles?
spraying this, spraying that.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
I think it's where a lot of adults get injured. Yeah, so
My my
you know
dad
that
my dad came for the holidays here. We just passed, it's just January, and he walks a lot, has a dog, very active, gets out walking around, and I got him to play racquetball against my 11-year-old daughter, and he after about 30 minutes he was just like completely gassed. He was like, I need to rethink how I think about continuing mobility, athleticism, and the like, because he was shocked because there's no way he's moving that fast ever with his dog. So he did a great job. Very thankful he didn't get hurt, but my daughter was making him run a lot.
cool, cool. And then do you have any other picks?
This is a very Colorado one. It's pretty ridiculous. I like spending my time outside, as you know, Eric. I like some golf. I like skiing, and weather is pretty integral to those sports, I would say. And for years, I relied on the Apple Weather app. I thought the weather's the weather. And about a year and a half ago, I downloaded AccuWeather. There's a free version. And here in Colorado, where literally this morning, I think our temperature rose 30 degrees in about 2 or 3 hours. We live in the Super Bowl of meteorological forecasting, and it's just so important to have good weather dialed in. Is it going to be raining? Is it going to be snowing? Is it going to be -10? Is it going to be 50? Can you go play golf? It's a great app to have that I thought was just so pedestrian, so easy, and somehow Apple, bless their products, I think they really don't do a good job on their weather app.
Right. Yeah. I've because of that, I'm an Apple user as well, and I've downloaded a bunch of weather apps, and I feel like they're either filled with ads, and maybe that comes with the paid version where you remove the ads, or I fall in love with that weather app and then it's discontinued or something like that. It feels like it's bought by the Weather Channel and then it's kind of it's out. Or that's happened to me a few times now, and so I
Somebody's
have to check out.
consolidating all the weather knowledge in this
Yeah,
country into a single app that they're going to charge a lot of money for.
and put and pump a lot of ads into, I guess. Yes,
Yeah, but
and
AccuWeather,
so
it's a great app.
good, awesome. Thanks for the tip. And then I'm also impressed with your ability to match your painting in the background. That's very impressive.
Hopefully, I came across okay. I don't do too many
Yeah.
podcasts, so thanks
What?
for bearing with me.
And this is the second location. So your location here is that we found a different spot with a little better connectivity, and so this was a kind of makeshift, and it's just impressive how you you match the painting in the background. So
You got to be ready for those audio, video, visual technicalities.
yes, indeed. All right. Well, how can we find out more about H5 or yourself?
Go to our website, h5datacenters.com. You can find us on various portals as well, including Baxtel. We go to a lot of conferences. We try to throw great events. I know I'll be at PTC, the Pacific Telecommunications Council Conference next week in Honolulu. We have NANOG coming up in February. Metro Connect, I think, at the end of February in Fort Lauderdale. So I think we're very active on the conference circuit. We love getting out, touching the ecosystem, hearing about interesting things happening on the mechanical, the electrical, customer side of things, the equipment side. It's all changing. It's all pretty fascinating right now.
Awesome. Well, I'd look forward to seeing you out at PTC.
All right, let's do it. Let's catch a wave. Mahalo.
I want to learn about you, and let's do it in a really brief capsule of approximately 60 seconds. So, late nights or early mornings?
Late nights.
New York or California?
California all the way, specifically SoCal.
Sweet or salty?
Salty.
Cats or dogs?
Corgis.
Introvert or extrovert?
Extrovert.
Meeting or email?
Email.
Phone or text?
Text.
Who's the smartest person you know?
My friend Nate Schaefer.
What's your favorite food?
Japanese.
Favorite sport?
Football.
First job?
I worked at a baseball card shop.
Nice. I used to collect baseball cards back in the day, when I was in like 6th grade.
6th grade, exactly. Yeah.
Fiction or nonfiction?
Fiction.
Secret talent?
Skier.
Cabinet or rack?
Cabinet.
Cabinet. All right.